6, 1944. Almost 4 years earlier, to the people of France, then prostrate under the heel of the German jackboot, Winston Churchill broadcast this hope.
N'oubliez pas que nous ne nous arrêterons jamais. Nous sommes sur sa piste. Si lui ne peut pas nous détruire, nous sommes sûrs de le détruire avec toute sa clique et tous leurs travaux. Allons, bonne nuit. Dormez bien. Rassemblez vos forces pour l'aube. Car l'aube viendra. Elle se lèvera, brillante pour les braves, douce pour les fidèles qui auront souffert, glorieuse sur les tombeaux des héros. Vive la France!
Four years later, on the morning of the 6th day of June, 1944, Winston Churchill addresses the House of Commons.
I have also to announce to the House that during the night and early hours of this morning, the first of the series of landings in force upon the European continent has taken place. In this case, the liberating assault fell upon the coast of France.
The first troops to go into action on D-Day, June 6, 1944, had come from the skies over Normandy. One of the American airborne commanders who made the drop was General Maxwell Taylor.
The only witnesses of my landing was a herd of Norman cows. In anticipation of the difficulties of assembling the troops in the dark, we were all equipped with a little toy, one that made a clicking sound. We called it a cricket. With my pistol in one hand and my cricket in the other, I cautiously edged my way down the Norman hedgerow. Eventually, I heard someone moving on the other side and anxiously sounded my cricket. To my joy, a friendly cricket responded. I jumped around the hedgerow and there saw the most reassuring sight of the war. An American parachutist who had lost his helmet, but he had his M1 with a bayonet fixed and he looked ready to go. We embraced each other and then set out to reassemble the 101st Airborne Division. It took us several hours in the darkness to assemble as many as 70 of our parachutists. Unfortunately, they were the wrong kind. There were cooks and KPs and typists, few of whom carried the M1 rifle. Also, there were lots of officers. We had a couple of generals, a colonel or two, and an indefinite number of majors. As daylight came and we headed for the coast to discharge our mission of helping ashore the amphibious landing, the thought occurred to me, which I have often expressed, that never were so few commanded by so many.
The objectives were achieved, but not without heavy sacrifice. Paratroopers are landing on French soil. The bombers are taking off from their bases in England. In the 24 hours of June 6th, the Allies fly 14,600 sorties.
So great was our superiority in the air that all the enemy could put up during daylight over the invasion beaches was a mere 100 sorties.
The Atlantic Wall, the most formidable bulwark in the history of warfare. Behind massive coastal fortifications, 500,000 Germans wait. The initial barrage stuns the Germans and upsets their radar, but it does not destroy many of the concrete bunkers of the Atlantic Wall.
From Calais to Guernsey, the Germans had no fewer than 120 major pieces of radar equipment for finding our convoys. We discovered them all and attacked them so successfully with rocket-firing aircraft that not 1 in 6 was working.
At his headquarters near Paris, Field Marshal von Rundstedt, Supreme Commander in the West, decides that the airborne assault is a diversionary action. Nevertheless, he sends an urgent message to Colonel General Jodl, Hitler's headquarters, asking permission to use reserve panzer divisions if necessary. Hitler is sleeping. The situation is not considered serious enough to disturb his rest. Already, the first Allied naval vessel is in position. A midget submarine commanded by Lieutenant Honor.
We surfaced just before dawn on the 6th of June, set up our marking beacons, and waited for the invasion to arrive. As dawn broke, we saw the invasion force coming towards us in the distance. This was a great relief, but also a very frightening sight, and I can well imagine the Germans' feelings at that moment.
Destroyers and gun and rocket batteries mounted on landing craft pounded the beach defenses, while farther to seaward, battleships and cruisers kept down the fire of the defending batteries. Landing and support craft with infantry, with tanks, with self-propelled artillery, and a great variety of weapons and engineer demolition teams to deal with the beach obstacles, all formed up into groups and moved towards the beaches. Opposition was slight until the first landing craft were a mile from shore. But then mortar and machine gun fire grew. Submerged obstacles and mines made the landings hazardous, and many craft were wrecked after setting down their troops. There was no doubt that we had achieved a tactical surprise.
London calling in the home, overseas, and European services of the BBC and through United Nations Radio Mediterranean. Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, have just issued communique number 1. Under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces, supported by strong air forces, began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France.
Sous le commandement du général Eisenhower, les forces navales alliées, avec le soutien de puissantes formations
onder bevel
aériennes,
van generaal Eisenhower is hedenmorgen met het ontschepen van geallieerde legeringen de African Noordkust.
London is calling you in the night.
Aujourd'hui, M. Churchill a donné à la déclare de cette opération aérienne.
In England, there is a pause in the day's work. King George addresses the British people.
The Queen joins with me in sending you this message. She well understands the anxieties and cares of our women folk at this time, and she knows that many of them will find, as she does herself, fresh strength and comfort in such waiting upon God.
In France, there is new hope. Moscow hails the launching of the Second Front. Stalin cables Churchill. I have received your communication about the success of the beginning of the Overlord operation. It gives joy to us all and hope of further successes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, last night when I spoke with you about the fall of Rome, I knew at that moment that troops of the United States and our allies were crossing the Channel in another and greater operation. It has come to pass with success thus far. And so, in this poignant hour, I ask you to join with me in prayer.
Beach, northwest of Bayeux, the 5th American Corps runs into severe resistance.
My name is Henry Watts. As a lieutenant commander, I was a beach master on Omaha Beach on D-Day. I was assigned to a section there designated as Easy Red. Once on the beach, we worked our way up under machine gun fire through the obstacles. Men were falling to the right and left of me, and it was very difficult to crawl on our hands and knees about 100 yards up to our first shelter. It was a bank of stones at the high water mark, which protected us from small arms fire. Much to our surprise, on reaching there, we found the bank covered with the American assault troops, the fellows who were supposed to take the cliffs that commanded the beach. One of my outfit shouted to a sergeant, "Why the hell don't you go up and take the cliff?" The sergeant shouted back, "Why the hell don't you?"
The enemy defenses in this sector have recently been taken over by a complete German division in full strength and on the alert. The Americans were watched anxiously by their commander, General Bradley.
The going on Omaha Beach was very tough. And since we had some follow-up units to go in over that beach, or scheduled to go in over that beach, we began to think of other places to put them ashore. And it wasn't until 1:30 that the troops on Omaha began to get up the cliffs behind the beaches and clear the beach for follow-up units.
It was not until the 7th of June, after losing several thousand men, that our allies were able to force their way inland.
So the issue is decided. The Atlantic Wall is decisively broken, the Army safely ashore. On June 10, General Montgomery reports that he is sufficiently established ashore to receive a visitor.
President Roosevelt, I wrote, "You used the word stupendous in one of your early telegrams to me. I must admit that what I saw could only be described by that word. How I wish you were here. So far as it has gone, this is certainly a glorious story, not only liberating the fields of France after atrocious enslavement, but also uniting in bonds of true comradeship the great democracies of the West and the English-speaking peoples of the world."